To anyone who records here and isn't a Christian, we would love to have you here. And I'd love to say hello and welcome you to Harbor Trinity Church, to Christian Podcast Studios, and to all that would be able to happen through this little room and through those little cameras. Just because we're welcoming and accepting of a person wherever they are doesn't mean I have to affirm everything that a person's doing, right? I can disagree, but I can still sit at a table and have lunch with them. Like Jesus had the ability to be a friend of sinners and still call people on sin. And no person, I mean, just think of the greatest sinner that Jesus knew. Not one of them was, I don't want to be around Jesus anymore. But all of the religious people didn't want to be around Jesus anymore. Say, I kind of want to choose the way of Jesus in that of,
I love it.
Let's be friends to people.
Hey, what's up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of ChristianPodcast.com here at the studio at Harbor Trinity. And we have Harbor Trinity's pastor, Justin Chandler, today on the show, which this is amazing. Justin, the last time we spoke with you, we were the previous studio.
Yeah.
And it was last year, somewhere in January 2025. We were talking about like sports and pastors, what sports are pastors' favorite sports and stuff like that.
Yeah, you had me rank them.
Yes,
yeah.
With emojis.
That's right.
Right? So we're super happy. I just want to kick it off with like gratitude, man. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've been saying a lot on the show, that the doors opened up for us to be here, but a lot of why the doors opened up were because you opened the doors to us, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we want to kick it off with like just gratitude, man. Like we're so thankful, so blessed. The studio, as you can see, it's beautiful, it's awesome. It's our privilege and honor to be here and not only do our show, but help other people record. So in the last few months that we've been here, it's been nothing short of like awesome. Yeah. It's just every day, like when I come in here, it's like, wow, what a privilege. It's I just thank God every day for being here and allowing the space to, be used for this. So anyways, gratitude. So how are you doing, man?
Good. I mean, we talked yesterday and you're like, I get to come in and I get to look out here and I get to see the mountains. I'm a mountain person.
Yes.
Right. And my office does not have a view of the mountains. So I was like so jealous in a little moment.
I might have to trade.
Yeah, we'll trade rooms. We'll figure out, we'll redo the whole thing. No, it's been so good. Yeah. I'm grateful.
Yeah. Oh, so good, man. So, yeah, Mili, how are you doing today?
Amazing. Like you said before, we are pretty thankful to God and to you for this beautiful space. And meanwhile, you was talking, Beto, I was thinking sometimes we're super busy. And other times we had like 1 or 2 clients per week. And then we talk about it like, oh, thank you, Lord, because this free time we can be used for our family, for our church. It's amazing how God is been orchestrating our time.
Yep.
He really cares for our healthy relationship with Him. Because if we're not here working for other people, we are doing our podcast and we are preparing, going to scripture, taking my time to be with the Lord. And sometimes we would just want to achieve our goals and be busy and look for how we can
make more money, right?
Fulfill our needs to our home, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we have everything we need, and just we are thankful for this space here present and the space on our home where we can be with Him.
Yeah. I think it's a good point, like what you said of this podcast that people are watching is only a part of who you are, right? You're also small business owners that are trying to help create space for other people to record. And you also are a part of a church and help to lead that, and your parents, and you're a spouse. So there's a lot of ands that, sometimes you don't have the flexibility to say, I have the free time to even consider what do I want to do with my time. Like sometimes you're just so busy, you're just trying to make it to the end of it. And so I think it's a good perspective to have gratitude even in empty moments, because they can be filled with something really valuable too.
To recharge.
Recharge. Okay, so you said you're a mountain man, and I remember one of the last year, somewhere along last year, we were doing the master class with Pastor Mike and Kirk. And so we had to meet each other, right? Like go on a coffee and have coffee together. And I was talking about preparing to go to Mount Whitney. And then you were telling me about like, I grew up in Colorado and going to the mountains and stuff like that. So I'll make it super quick because I said it on the show many times. But like somewhere in January, you had said, hey, like if you ever need space, like come check out Harbor Trinity. I have tons of rooms, and you just kind of like left it at that, right? And what's so interesting is that when I went to the mountain, that was in June 2025 to Mount Whitney, and it was the best experience of my life. Like God spoke to me on the mountain. I don't know how much you know of this story, but basically I received healing on my knee on the mountain, on the snow. It was epic. And then I had my oldest boy and my younger boy with me. So my oldest boy summited Mount Whitney, while me and my other boy got kind of like stuck at like 11,000 feet of elevation. And but then God spoke to me on the mountain, and basically what he said, just to make the story short, right? He said, like, look back and see how far you've come. So when I look back, I'm like, wow, like this whole thing with the Christian podcast it's been a journey, and almost like a 20-year long journey where it was like God was saying, okay, you wouldn't have any of this without all these years you've been like through struggles and through like, although we've been through, right, that we're not gonna go so deep on that, but just to be like, oh wow, God, like you have been orchestrating our life the last 20 years. So with that, when I came back from the mountain, I was like, wow, I really think God wants me to, like us, to pursue this thing called Christian podcast. So that's where I came back like so bold, like, I remember Justin had said like, hey, come check out the rooms. So that's like 6 months later, we can like knock on the door at your office again. And you're still like, let's look around and let's check out some rooms. So I wonder, what was it like for you on your end, right? Like, how do you perceive like people knocking on your door? I'm sure like a lot of people maybe come with ideas and opinions about whatever it might be, whether it's ideas for the church or ministries, different opportunities that people believe, okay, I really think we should do this. How do you filter that? Did you filter somebody like us and say, let's check out some rooms versus maybe to somebody else, you don't say that. I don't know. Like,
that's a good
what's
question.
Your vantage point?
So let's start with mountains. Because when you said you hiked it, I didn't grow up hiking Pikes Peak, which is in the place where, it's America's mountain, right in front of where my mom lives. And so I didn't grow up hiking that, but I began as a youth pastor taking groups of students to a conference there. And then I would lead students to hike this mountain every year, which is really wild when you're talking about, here's this group of 60 that we're going to take from, 5,000 feet and we're going to go to 14,000. Whitney's a little harder because it starts lower and goes higher. So it's a much bigger mountain overall. So then I remember you telling the story of you've got like hooks and shoes, and then I think you were sliding down the mountain and you weren't supposed to.
Never did it before.
Which is a bad story to tell your wife afterwards. So then I was like, I guess I have a new mountain on my bucket list, right? Of a way to climb it. And both of my sons, we were talking about this last night at dinner. They're like, every time we go to Colorado, we need to hike Pikes Peak. Well, my oldest son says never again. And then I thought, well, we can just stay in California. We'll just go hike Mount Whitney. I was like, I know one dad who took 2 sons. I'll be the next dad who took 2 sons, and we'll see how it plays out. But I remember your post and even just sharing that, and both your journey and that moment on the mountain, both to receive like a radical healing in your life, but then to let that be a picture of what God is doing, I think was really beautiful. So to answer the open doors question, as a pastor, there's no shortage of opinions, right? People have something to say about everything. And so even I had this last Sunday, someone in very opposite ways. There was someone who was so said that it's the greatest sermon I've ever heard in my life, right? I was like, that's a lot. I was like, I didn't think that, but they felt it was the greatest sermon they'd heard in their life. And there was someone who was so angry at me, like verbally kind of getting after me. And so
Extremes.
I'm like, it's wild that that's there, right? And so I think that that's a part of pastoring that's really difficult sometimes, is managing both sides of it. As it comes to our location, so I've been the pastor here for 3 years, but it's an incredible location in our city, right? Fairview and Baker. It's really close to the 405, which then in turn is really close to the 73 and the 55. So there's a lot of ways for people to get here really easily. And because of how visible it is, there's plenty of people who are like, you have a great location, I want to do this. Which isn't necessarily a bad question. It's just there's a lot of things that people would say, I could see me using your space to do this. And so then a lot of the question is, so how much does that serve our city? How much does that benefit our community? Is there something that it would add to the good of our city as a result of it? And so that's kind of the first thing, is like, is this just something for a person, or does it extend beyond it? And then I also think one of, I guess, a line in my life is that friendship can open doors that other relationships can't, right? Wow. I mean, we were friends before you were here. So you didn't ask me, hey, can we come to your church that's bigger than ours and find an empty room and set up stuff? I said to you, hey, you've been talking about how we can transition or maybe some different stuff. We have extra room, so maybe that's something that we could consider. And I think we both approached it really open-handedly, like, let's see, because it could have been something where you're like, this isn't going to work for us. And then, or I could have said, hey, this isn't going to work for us very practically. But it was a part that it said, I think that there's something that would be, I don't even call it mutually beneficial. I think there's a way that we can help you do ministry in a different way. And I'd love to be able to support that. Some of it stems from, I had a friend of mine who was on staff at a church in Michigan called 242. And so they had a number of campuses in different locations, but one of their main ones, they built their church to be more like a community center than a traditional church. And so even the way they structured the building, the way they have things set up was, during the week, this is going to be actively used by other people who are not a part of the church. And then on the weekends, we're going to host church services here. And so when you go during the week, I mean, there's all kinds of classes that are going on there. There's all kinds of people who are meeting. Like, the church is good for the community in its physical building as much as it is spiritually. And so I just have had that as a viewpoint that I've held, that like, I want our church, the church that I'm a part of, to be good for immediately, like the neighborhood that I'm a part of, for the city I'm involved in, for people who are around, as much as it's good on the weekends. And so then we started talking about this room, which is a complete, I mean, we can talk about the transformation of this place, which is a fun one in its own right. Like, that's a good story.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit, because when we moved in here, well, before we moved in, so I say, yeah, just one thing about, I guess, the open door from our vantage point, at least when we were, I mean, like I said, every time we come here, it's like, wow, what a blessing, what a privilege. But I think if I was trying to assess, like, why did you open this huge door for us, Lord? Like, I think something we could pinpoint was because it's been used for the kingdom.
Sure.
Right? And to us, it was really clear, okay, the kingdom is like preaching the good news, casting out demons, and healing the sick. Like, those three things. And what's interesting is that when like the very first day we're moving furniture in here, that was happening. I mean, we're praying for people. We're literally like casting out demons. However people might think of that, but from our vantage point, like, we were casting out demons, and it was like very tangible, like, oh wow, like since the very beginning, like even before the furniture was arranged and the cables were connected, it was already happening. And I'm like, oh, so that's why God is opening the door, because it's for his kingdom. Yeah. So that was really cool. But yeah, let's talk about like what the room was like before. I mean, you had been here 3 years. So when we got in here first, I mean, we met you at your office and you're like, let's go around.
Yeah.
So you took us around the entire place. So tell us a little bit about the I don't know, the logistics of the building. Because I mean, there's a preschool, there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of rooms. It's just pretty cool. And then also I want to keep in mind and perspective that People are tuning in from other places, even of the world, right? Sure. And you mentioned like Michigan, how some church there inspired you.
Yeah.
So I feel like the end goal is to inspire people that will listen to like, oh, you know, maybe I can see my building or the place God has placed me with a different lens than what I've been seeing it through, right?
Yeah. So I think a good part of the story is Harbor Trinity's story, right? So started in 1955, so we're over 70 years old now, which is kind of crazy. And so like a lot of churches in our city started at the fairgrounds and then found this piece of land, which there's a whole story about how this piece of land came to be. And then we have a little interior building that was kind of the first room that the church met in, it's called the Crane Chapel now for us, but that was kind of where it started gathering. And then they moved over and built a sanctuary and a fellowship hall. And then I think in true like church fashion, you can see kind of how generations did it. This kind of lower level was where additional classrooms were met. And so there was a period of time where people wanted to be involved in so many church classes of all kinds. Like every room had a different class that people would meet in. And then this building that we're in was built in the 80s, which was another extension of that, like more classrooms for more people to show up to more spaces. And then it also helped to launch our church's preschool, which is over 40 years old now.
Wow.
And so in that way, there was kind of this overabundance of classrooms, but then generationally, people stopped looking at church and saying, what class can I go to? Because I don't need 17 classes, right? So in that, we started to see kind of this progressive, we didn't use the classrooms as much as we would have thought. And I have been a part of church cultures and contexts where in a lot of ways, like the church is empty most of the week, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll have a lot of activity on Sunday for however many services. If it's one or multiple, there's just a lot of activity on Sunday. And then maybe they have something going else on like Wednesday, that they have some midweek thing, whether it's for students or other people. So there's a lot of energy on Wednesday. And then you've probably got like a band rehearsal and a meeting, but otherwise everything else is quiet. And I just recognize, I mean, even though we're decades removed, I mean, this is both the land is worth a lot of money. Mm-hmm. The buildings in turn then become worth a lot of money. And so then it's how are we utilizing this asset that we've been entrusted with from the Lord? How are we using it to make the most of it all the time? And so I said to some of our staff yesterday, I just said, I'm so grateful for our preschool because there's always noise. It's not great for a podcast all the time, but there's always noise, right? And just saying, how boring would it be to be here if there was nothing else going on? Like it just would be a lot of people sitting in offices, you know, waiting for people to arrive for a couple times a week. And so just trying to have something more that feels like there's always activity that's supporting our community here. And to say that no one gets to hold ownership of a room when you're only there for an hour, right? Or you're only there for an hour and a half, or you're only meeting it once a month. Like this room could be used in a lot of ways and a lot of times between now and then. So trying to say what opportunities could be opened up to do that. And we even think about that with like our parking lot. You know, we host a food distribution on the second Saturday of each month that, I mean, there's more cars here than there are parking spaces, and it goes out into the neighborhood. And that's a way that we can use the parking lot for something. There was a friend of mine who started a tackle business. And so then they started having these like tackle expos, and he's like, well, they're wanting to move to Costa Mesa. So is that something that we could open up? And I was like, we're not much of like a swap meet people. I was like, but you're a friend of mine and you're a part of this community. Like if we can help support you in your business, then let's try to open that up. There's another friend who's got a driving company with parents and teenagers to help support some of the, you know, requirements that the law has for teenage drivers. He's like, hey, could that happen if we were to meet it there? You've got a great space that people could park and maybe it could be easy to learn to drive in. I was like, that sounds great because I've got a teenage driver. And even another church, right, that doesn't meet, doesn't have a stable meeting space. They're like, hey, we want to do a group, but we need a larger room that's bigger than a house. Would it be okay if we met at your church in one of the evenings? I'm like, yes, because the capital C church is growing as a result of it. So I think that that's some of the perspective. Yeah. But when you walked in here, I mean, this was it was called a middle school room because we have a youth room that's on this side of it. And so the main meeting space for the youth was over here. And then ultimately they would kind of walk over here and do small groups, which would be the tail end of Wednesday. So let's call it 30 to 45 minutes. And then on Sunday mornings, potentially they'd have some meetings in here. So when we expanded to Sunday mornings, let's call it a couple of hours, and realizing that same thing that we were trying to accomplish with teenagers, we could find another venue for that, but this could be a really great room to use for something else. They initially planned for it to be a coffee shop, which you can even just tell from the way it's laid out. You're like, oh yeah, they would serve coffee in here, and you could make a coffee and podcast studio that I'm sure you'd love a whole lot.
Yes, I bought today we're getting a coffee maker.
Yeah, that's all of your barista dreams are coming true too.
Expensive one.
Yeah, very expensive. Yeah.
So I'm already.
The dreams are coming true. So it's that part of, the ceiling is open, and this is just fun story, right? There was a fire that happened in here that they had to repair some stuff, and so they left the ceiling like this as a result of the fire. But then it actually becomes a better functional space for how you all are using it. And so I think there's a lot of dots that just connected before the day when I can still remember I showed you a couple other rooms, and you're like, and then you walked in here and went, oh, like this was like everything that you had dreamed of. You just walked into the room and you saw it when it was still kind of a mess and a bit of a storage room. And I think you could start to see ahead to what it'd become today and even where it's going to.
A designer came over to do a podcast, and right away she mentioned, oh, I love this industrial minimalist place.
That's right.
Oh, she put a name on it.
Yeah.
That's nice.
To your design style. You have an aesthetic.
Like, okay, I'm minimalist, and this is like industrial.
Yeah, but I also think as like an advertisement for you guys, I mean, I do think it helps all kinds of podcasters podcast here too. I think if you have something that's really complex, it's hard to put a lot of people into it, right? But you have multiple scenes that you can shoot. You have multiple locations, even in this room, that you can shoot, multiple setups that I think suit whatever someone's trying to accomplish in this venue. I think it gives a lot of versatility, which is where you want to be, right? Let's load in stuff, let's move stuff, but keep it really simple and change a lot, So.
And one thing I love is when people start sharing in our conversations, they will say, oh, I brought my daughter here for preschool.
Yeah.
And they don't live here anymore.
Right.
They're not around, but then that opened up for us to have a good conversation. So you're still coming to church? Where are you in your faith?
Yeah.
Can I pray for you? It's been amazing.
Well, and I think our preschool, there's a number of people who have gone to preschool here that never attended church here, right? That's not one of the requirements. But I do think even as like we've structured the pricing for our preschool, we're trying not to make the most money possible. Like I think we probably could make more money and we could charge more. We're not trying to do that. I'm a parent and I recognize how much it costs to have your kids go to preschool or to need childcare. And so I was like, we want this to be an extension of the ministry of our church. And if you think there's generations before that bought this building, I mean, there's some generations that built it, that the people of the church actually built all of these buildings. They didn't hire workers to do so. And so it's like by their own blood, sweat, and tears, like these buildings are up. And then as I arrived at Harbor Trinity, we continue to be debt free. So we don't have a mortgage payment. We don't have land payments. And so then I think that gives us a greater flexibility in some of the other stuff because we're not trying to overcome this. We have to pay this just to be here, right? And so I think that helps us see, there's a ministry that comes to our preschool, and hopefully it would create a space that people would want to be a part of the church also. And we're in a much more collaborative spot now. I think it helps that I'm a dad, right? So even as we're shooting this, like we wrap and then I get to go take my daughter home after school's over. And I think that it just is allowing people to see church potentially from a different way. And so there's a lot of people who have visited Harbor Trinity, whether through the studio, through the preschool, or some other thing we're doing. So their first time at our church is not in a worship service. It's in something else that's happened around it, which I also think really helps.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so one of the reasons I love what's going on here, it's also because I guess in the last few years, I've heard a lot of like the word revival, revival is happening, and every 500 years another revival happens. And I've been saying that from our vantage point, I feel like a lot of it's kind of like the media revival that we see. A lot of like good Christian content has been produced, right? And part of that is, we have a studio where a lot of Christian content is being produced, and we love, when Christian podcasters come. Not that we only offer, our services to Christians, but we really love when people are, they have ministries and they have a way to reach an audience that only they could. Right? And to be a part of that is amazing. But here's the other part that I feel like I've been putting a whole lot more emphasis in the last, I guess this year. Okay, sure. So this month, where I think this is where I want to put more emphasis, I guess, together, is if revival is happening and if we really want Costa Mesa, which is, for a lot of people, Costa Mesa is just like, where is that at, right? But Costa Mesa is home of like the Jesus Revolution or the Jesus Movement revival that happened in like the late 70s, right? So Costa Mesa has had a really like solid like background as far as like reaching people for Christ and impacting the culture like globally. That's insane to think that this like small city has had such big impact. So anyways, all that to say, my emphasis now is like, okay, if another revival is happening, it's already happening. And it's happening now, and it's happening through what God is doing, like even right now. And if we want to be a part of it, it's like, that's the gratitude, like, wow, Lord, we get to serve other people, reach people for you, like, use media to bring Jesus to people, right? On YouTube and wherever. So that makes me excited because I feel like now you have a vision, for Harbor Trinity, and to partner, almost like coming from a, like, let's just say, like, we're the capital C, right? But we come from a different church. Yep. And to have a space where our studio can be hosted and we're still the church, that is amazing. That to me, it just speaks loads about the heart of who God really is, right? And how he sees his people and how collaborative that can be. And not to like, oh yeah, this is our church and this is what we do, and keep everybody outside, right? This is our ministries. So I feel like God's been breaking those barriers, and so I think that's revival. But what are maybe your hopes for your city and for the impact that this city has had, but can also continue to have in the world? This thing is like, it's global. Yeah. It may not be like huge numbers, but like thousands of people log into like christianpodcast.com. To me, that's like, wow, it's just mind blowing. Yeah. So I'm always thinking, how can we inspire people that are tuning in, wherever they're tuning in from? Yeah. I never thought about it, but in some ways, revival is this different way of saying viral. Right? It's just this thing. So this could be our revival podcast. I don't know. Yeah. So I would add, it helps from a church standpoint. I'm friends with both of your pastor, right? Like he's been a really good friend of mine. He's been really kind to me. And so he and I met, we started playing basketball on a basketball court. So there's just a mutual love for sports. And we just happened to be pastors in the city. He was a lead pastor at a church. I was a staff pastor at a different church. So kind of different roles. And then I resigned from that job and had no idea what I was doing with my life. And he was the first person who called and said, I want to talk to you. I want to have coffee. I want to meet with you. Because I think that there's a place for you in our city still, even if you're not working at that church. And there's a place for you if you want to be a part of a church. And so he can be a bit of a dreamer and just like start bouncing tennis balls off the wall. And you're like, which of these is real? And are we just like brainstorming here? But he's like, maybe we'll help you plan, or maybe we'll do this. And then I didn't understand kind of what was occurring then, but he suggested that I could come over here to speak to help the board while they were trying to hire their next pastor. And so I truly showed up just hoping to be helpful. And then out of that grew this opportunity to be the lead pastor here.
And I think when pastors are friends with other pastors in their city, I think it's better for the city. It's better for the church too, because, Christian people can be fickle like anybody can and can be picky like anybody can. And so there is even moments where, you'll see one church talk about another church. And one of the best things is to be able to say, I'm a friend with your pastor. And that takes away all of the, I'm going to potentially talk bad about this person because he's a friend of Justin's. And then it's not, and I can still love the ministry of another church and choose to do ministry in a different way. Like all of that works out. And so we have something really special in Costa Mesa through Love Costa Mesa and through how there's just been generations of pastors who have prayed together, which I think is the true starting point, and then who have become friends together. And then out of that, I think you're seeing the collective church be stronger, which then is helping our city to be stronger. And then in terms of like revival, I am a revivalist. I mean, I come from a much more, spirit-led background. And so I do believe in revival in Ardea. I do pray for revival. And so there's a lot going on in our country right now that's really hard and it's really bad. And people would say, it's never been this bad in our country before. It's like, you should read more American history. Because it was bad, right? Like, there's a reason why we had to have a first Great Awakening, right? Which is kind of this big, pivotal, marking spiritual moment in our country's history. There's also a reason why we had to have a second, right? And then every generation, there's been this continual need for revival because every generation needs to experience God in their own way, right? And have God move. So you're not just saying, my parents had a really cool spiritual moment. I've experienced God also, and here's the thing he's invited me into. And so I think when it comes to podcasting and opportunities, I do think there's a way that God is going to use media in the current day to be different than how it's been in the past. I mean, Christians were a part of having hospitals be global as like a thing. And so if you go to most places in the world, there's some denominational hospital that's there because Christians made hospitals, going even back to like the Roman periods of time. And even to say that people would have access to healthcare is such a Christian thought, even if it's extended differently. The abolition of slavery and saying people can't own people, Christians were the primary advocates of that. The number one, people who are involved in like adoption and orphanages are Christians. The global water crisis and helping to solve that is, so Christians have been engaged, but recently I think a lot have pulled back because they don't know how to show up in the world, or they don't know how to, show up around people who don't believe the same. And so I think there's a way we say, here's this thing that we're providing that is really good. And there's a way that you can be a part of this thing that will serve you. So whether it's recording a podcast, regardless if it's Christian content, we're going to help produce something in a way that's going to allow you to see Christians in a different way, that may then allow you to approach faith in a different way. And if Christians did that with radio, when they're flying around all these countries that had access to radio but had never heard the gospel, I was like, think about how this is going to parts of the world that would never have a church in it. But we're talking about Jesus and how he's leading us, through YouTube and Facebook and other social media channels. So
yeah, that's cool. That's exciting. Okay, so you talked about a little bit of, like even at the studio, right? Helping people who are maybe not necessarily Christians or even believers. And I feel like you have a natural side of you that leans towards like the non-Christian, because when we talked on the other episode like a year ago, you were saying I wasn't raised a Christian, right? I wasn't raised in a Christian home. So I think you have a really open perspective to that, where I mean it's interesting because I think I remember a year ago I was kind of like debating like, how do you go about a business where your focus is on, it's called the Christian podcast, right? Or Christian podcast studio. So in people's minds that can be, okay, are you only recording like faith-based content or what is it like, right? But we also serve people who may not necessarily be Christians, but sometimes like we can tell, right? And even Paul says, I think in Romans, he says, God put his law in people's hearts. And there's people who are not Christian, but they basically follow God's rule in their hearts, and like, oh, there's a good way to go about being human, and there's a wrong way about being a human, right? So what's your perspective on that, when it comes to maybe like Christian owned businesses serving like the non-Christian? Do you have any advice for us? Clearly you opened the doors for us to be here, but I don't know, did you ever get a little bit like, I wonder who is going to record next there that might be stuff like that? I don't know.
So feel free to use this and recycle this however many times you want to. I'll look right to anybody else. To anyone who records here and isn't a Christian, we would love to have you here. And I'd love to say hello and welcome you to Harbor Trinity Church, to Christian Podcast Studios, and to all that would be able to happen through this little room and through those little cameras. I think there's a part of it because, just because we're welcoming and accepting of a person wherever they are doesn't mean I have to affirm everything that a person's doing, right? I can disagree, but I can still sit at a table and have lunch with them. Like I don't have the viewpoint that it's just cast all of that off. And I do, and I would hold that Jesus had the ability to be a friend of sinners and still call people on sin. And no person, just think of the greatest sinner that Jesus knew. Not one of them was, I don't want to be around Jesus anymore. But all of the religious people didn't want to be around Jesus anymore. But they would have said, we hold the same things to be true about, the Torah law or our beliefs about God. We're united in that, but we're going to disagree about how you're choosing to engage with all of these other people. And so I would just say, I kind of want to choose the way of Jesus in that. I
love it.
Let's be friends to people. And then I think as it comes to creating Christian content or being a Christian producer, Andy Crouch wrote this book called Culture Making, which I just think is wonderful. And I do think it talks about how should Christians show up in just the broader world in general. Because I think there's an opportunity for Christians when we talk about here's a Christian product or a Christian business, that you could say this is only for Christians. And by default, what it'll do is it can lower the quality of what you're producing because only Christians need to want to buy it. But I think if you're going to create something and you're creating because you believe the creator has given you the ability to create it, everything you create should be a representation of how great he is. So if you make coffee, it should be the best cup of coffee. And people should say, I don't believe all those things those Christians believe, but their coffee is the best coffee I've ever had. Or their clothes are the best clothes, or their music is the best music. And so sometimes I think we've gotten away from wanting our little act of creation and representing the creator to be as good, because we can sell it to other people and they'll say, that's good enough. And so I love the generation of music artists or art creators, people who are in clothing, who want to give something really good to the world and have it be this offering of worship that God would be glorified in, and then ask the question, so why do you make such good clothes? Or why are you going to spend this much money on cameras, right? And lights and things, why do you care this much about podcasts? Why is it that important? And then to let that be the opportunity to share about Jesus and him creating. Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful. Okay, so are we almost due to
We got a couple minutes. She's right. Cool. Yeah, right below.
Right. Okay. So Mili, I love that you always have a kind of like a practical take on everything, right? We're kind of discussing a little bit of a revival, a little bit of the gratitude of being in this place and inspiring people that might be tuning in from wherever in the world. That God is at work, right? And God uses the seemingly small things and the mountain experience to do great things, right? And that serving people is important. Serving, the non-believer, right? And doing with the heart posture that as I serve anyone, maybe they'll experience some of Jesus, right? Jesus said, for if you do it unto them, you did it unto me. So to me, I feel like that's a little bit of what I bring to the table is whenever I'm setting up a camera, I do it as if I'm doing unto the Lord, right? And I hope that the people that are here experience that, why does this guy care so much about this? Maybe this God, maybe I should check out like who this Jesus is, right? So that's my hope. But what goes through your mind, Mili, when, I don't know, when you get here, when you see this place, the opportunities that have been opened up, and also Justin's heart, right? I mean, it's awesome. It's so cool.
For me, this is a reflection of what is the kingdom of God, right? What we are doing here by you opening the doors for us here is, I know He did it through you, right? Because Beto and I, since we started doing this Christian podcast in 2020, it was a huge commitment.
Yeah.
Like what that means to be a Christian podcast. And I went to study. I have a master's degree in marketing. So I always tell people I will never sell a product that I don't believe in. So I don't believe in products like pills or expensive creams and all this, because I know a lot of things are just marketing.
Yeah.
And you're paying the price for the brand or status, right? So I think we take this serious.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to present Jesus through my life.
Yeah.
And He is been equipping us to do His job. And I can talk, for myself. Like, He removed things. I was blind. Now I can see. The only thing He wants from me is to be in His presence, and that I don't need to work so hard to deserve this place or to deserve His forgiveness and His love. I just need to wake up every morning and seek Him, and it's so much freedom.
Yeah.
And Beto was saying the other day, Mili, it's just by our daily living simple life, that's how God is going to use us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's, in the world, we can compare ourselves with people like, oh, look, she's a mom and she have her own company and she have this much money. How she's doing all this, right? And doing all this. And it's hard to be in this world and don't compare ourselves. But they're like, oh, God has something for me too. And it's by living day by day, looking up what He wants from me in my simple life, being with my kids, having self-control with my kids, giving them love, and being merciful, because God is being merciful to us, right? So we need to give grace and mercy to our kids. And it is a huge privilege to be in this place. And God, I feel like God is broken us in the past in so many pieces. And the shape that we have right now, it's nothing compared how we started it. And I'm just super thankful.
Yeah.
And I can see His love and His grace. And I used to work so hard to belong. And now I understand that I belong to His kingdom, to serve. And we are here on Christian Podcast to give the best that we have. Even if it's sometimes a woman, a non-believer came over she's a doctor or scientist, something like huge. And I was carrying her luggage. And she's like, oh my goodness, why? Right? You are the owner of Christian Podcast and you're carrying these things. Like, she can understand why. But I tell her, oh, this is my privilege and I'm here to serve you. And I did this simple thing. I'm a hard worker, so I don't care to lifting. That's why I have a hernia repair.
That's right.
Twice. Yeah. That's true.
Because I don't learn my lesson. No, I just love to work hard and serve others.
Well, I think you're a great host in general. I think you have a gift of hospitality and hosting people. And I think if everything we do is a home, we are inviting people into our home, whether it's to sit on this couch and record a podcast or into your home to have a group or a meal. And so I think, how do we just have a more welcoming disposition? And I would just say, I think my conclusion of the episode, or the way, like, what's the bow that I put on it? We so often pursue mountaintop experiences, these really pivotal moments in our life. And we often look at like that one moment is what did it. And yet there were so many small moments that made that one moment possible. And so there is a everyday faithfulness of like, how are you showing up every day and just being faithful to what God has for you in that day? Because it will ultimately, one step after another is how you climb a mountain. And then it's only after one step after another that you look back and you go, man, look how far we've come. And there are parts of it that were really hard. But the mountaintop, you only get there by hiking up it, you know? So there's a part where we have to do some really hard walking. And then, you know, just even for our church, I just think of you both being here, and even just because your heart language is Spanish is something that I love so much, because our church, I mean, there's a whole neighborhood of people that live on the other side of the street from us, and we are a neighborhood church. But it's been some time since we've offered services in Spanish. And so it's even, I think it's even helping people to see our city in a different way, to engage in a different way, to be a part of it every day, and just to say, hey, so what do we have here? And so there's both excitement for you guys and what's to come, and even for our little neighborhood church too.
That's so good. Wow. How beautiful. Okay. So let's end on with mountains.
Yep.
When are we going to do a hike together?
I have another friend who wants to hike Mount Whitney.
Really?
He said to me. So maybe you'll like show us the way to go. But he wants to start low or whatever. There's a couple different points to start, right? He wants whatever the furthest possible is.
Oh, wow.
And then there's also, I think you and I drove by the one in Palm Desert too, or the one on the way out to the desert. There's one that I think you can start in Palm Springs.
Yeah, that's one's called Cactus to Clouds.
Yeah. He wants that one.
Okay.
And I'm like, it sounds great, but 3 a.m. to start hiking to make it by, midnight or something? I don't know. We'll see.
We got to convince you somehow.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, how many likes and comments does this video need to get in order for us to hike a mountain?
Wow.
I say 2. 2.
I say 2. That's not it. Yeah. I want to see, like,
if you give 2 likes, then we're hiking.
I want to see like 10,000 or something. We need to get going.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. This is awesome. Spirit led, and we're just, again, so thankful, and we pray over this church all the time, and over the people here, over your ministry, and even over the neighborhood. It's amazing. Like, every time I'm here, sometimes I'm just editing, I'm like praying, I'm like, thank you, Lord, and it's beautiful. So thank you so much.
Love you guys. Believe in you guys.
Thank you.
I'll see you in a year.
Love it.
Yeah.
In a year.
Next year's podcast.
Okay.
Right.
So let me end this. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you guys on the next one. Make sure you can visit us at christianpodcast.com, or leave a comment, a like, a subscribe, whatever it is. All the good things. We'll see you guys on the next one.
10,000 likes.
10,000 likes.